Joey Kenward's longtime friend of ours, Sportsnet 650, Rogers Media, joins us today from the left coast. And Joey, before we get into this WHL arms race, I was just checking your Twitter. 35 years ago today, Pat Quinn was suspended for the rest of the year by the NHL. I don't remember it, dude. Fill me in. What was the story on that? Do you remember?
Well, it's quite remarkable. If you think of back then, 3+ decades, even that was big news because something like that never really had happened before. But at the time, for those of you hockey fans or sports fans that might not remember that far back, Pat Quinn was head coach of the LA Kings at that time. But he had on a handshake agreement, not known by many people, he had made an agreement to become the president and GM with the Vancouver Canucks while he was working behind the bench for Los Angeles. Now, he's going to go to Vancouver the following season. Well, word got out eventually to the league headquarters, and at that time, the president of the league, John Ziegler, he was not a happy camper. So he wound up parking Pat Quinn in the stands for the rest of the year whenever the Kings were playing. And then Quinn came here to the West Coast above the border to be in charge of the Vancouver Canucks. And that's, 35 years ago today. We're going to talk a lot about transactions coming up here in a moment on both sides of the border. But you talk about such a transaction that was a hefty fine, even in those days, to be suspended for the year, not a player, but as an executive in the league, that's quite something.
That is, I'm glad I looked that up. That's amazing. So it does go on. So now they're just a lot better about keeping it a secret. Anyways, Joey, you, as I mentioned earlier, former voice of the Broncos and the Giants in the Western Hockey Leagues. You're following this very closely, like we all are. This arms race. You know, as we get ready for the Memorial Cup in Kamloops, just recap the last 24, 48 hours in the Western League. Are we done ahead of Tuesday's trade deadline now?
I think we might be done in the blockbuster variety, but I don't think we're done as far as the number of trades that are going to be made. Now, I know your crew have some graphics to be putting up here, and I wanted to go to the first deal that was made on the weekend, and this involved the Seattle Thunderbirds. So, Clark, if you can bring that up, this is the deal that saw Colton Dach leave the Kelowna Rockets, and he wound up going to the T-Birds, and there you see the return. Now, that's a lot for a player that's coming off a World Junior experience where he's hurt. He is a high NHL prospect of the Blackhawks, but a player that's played limited games this year due to multiple injuries and won't be joining an already stacked team for at least another month. Pretty good deal, though, when you're talking about a Seattle club that has totally gone all in, and I think rightly so. We're a league title winner a couple of years ago, a league finalist last year. They've sold a lot of their future, but they've got a great culture in place down in Kent, Washington, and they've got a good fan base, and they've got a good team. It doesn't come as a surprise that the T-Birds pulled the trigger there. Now, the deal that most around the league and around the country, I think, are talking about is the one that involved the upcoming Memorial Cup hosts. And that's the Kamloops Blazers, who made their big whopper of a deal with the Everett Silvertips, going after a player that I'm sure they identified even last summer to try to get onto their blue line. And that's Olen Zellweger, who was such a standout performer for Canada on the World Junior stage, helping them to back-to-back gold medal performances this month. The price to get a player like Zellweger is quite high. And that's something we haven't seen in the WHL in maybe ever, as far as the quantity of draft picks that are being exchanged from one team to another. I know that made a lot of headlines around Western Canada. I'm sure it made a lot of headlines in Ontario and in Quebec, where teams from those leagues are vying for a shot to get to the Memorial Cup. Where this doesn't really surprise me, though, is the fact that it's involving a team that, as we speak today, has a 1 in 4 chance of winning the Memorial Cup. And obviously, management and ownership in Kamloops, and remember, that's a storied franchise, a championship franchise in this league. To make that deal, to give away what they have in the future, that is, I think, a pretty good price to pay to bring in a player that obviously they targeted, and obviously that can be a big boost to that locker room moving forward. No matter how far they go in the WHL playoffs, they'll be playing in May, and he certainly makes that team a much more difficult team to play against, Rod.
Yeah, and then Vancouver and Winnipeg didn't want to be left out. The Ice have joined the arms race with a Canadian hero, two-time gold medalist Zach Ostapchuk going to Winnipeg. How much better does do the Ice become with that trade?
Well, on paper, you'd think they become better because, I mean, and we're going to see what they gave up in a second here, but like Ostapchuk's captain of Vancouver, as you mentioned, a back-to-back gold medal winner for Team Canada, a solid playoff performer. I think he had 24 points through 2 rounds last year in that surprise run the Giants made out here in British Columbia. Look at the price Winnipeg paid, though. Now, they're a team that right now is the best record in the league, Rod, right? And a team that's, you know, on paper, maybe the best in Canada out of all the Canadian-based teams. And that says a lot for the success the Ice have had and the success that James Patrick has with the players inside that locker room. But look at what they've given up. 3 first-round picks, 2 players off their roster, and 2 prospects, plus another draft pick. An 8-for-1 deal for a team that hasn't won a thing in the league since they relocated to Winnipeg. They've had good teams, and they lost in the Eastern Final last year to Edmonton. That one caught me really, really by surprise. And now when you look at what they've got left in their draft capital moving forward, not only towards the deadline on Tuesday, but in the years ahead, like over the next 4 drafts, 2 of them, they don't have a pick until the 7th round. Like that is stunning to me. They're getting a great player, no question about it. They've got a great team, no doubt about it. But that's an indication that this team has pushed all their chips in to try to win the league and get to the Memorial Cup. And if they don't get there, because it's not like Kamloops, right, Rod? They don't have the automatic 1 in 4 chance. They've got to win the conference, and then they've got to win who's in the West. They better hope Kamloops wins the West, and they better hope they win the East just to even secure a spot that way. Great team. To me, that was a really surprising move. And by the way, I want to add something as well. Barclay Parnetta, the GM of the Vancouver Giants, he's been applauded around junior hockey circles coast to coast, I think. He got 3 first-round picks last year at the deadline in different deals, one with Winnipeg, and he got a couple of first-rounders in the deal for Justin Sordoff to Edmonton. He got 3 first-rounders in one move yesterday. That's pretty impressive in today's junior hockey circles, isn't it?
No doubt. The biggest piece of them all is Connor Bedard not going anywhere. What are your thoughts on that, let alone what you're hearing?
I don't have a problem with it, to be completely honest with you. I was saying to people out here all along over the last couple of months that, franchise player, generational player, we're talking about that's the title he's going to have potentially with whatever NHL team he's going to be a part of at the draft this summer. This is one of the best players that the Regina Pats have ever had, and as we've just seen here, even in limited years, he's turning out to be one of the best players in WHL history. Could he still be moved? Yes. Anything's possible. But based on those graphics that we just put up and the return for players like Ostapchuk and like Zellweger, great players in their own rights, Bedard's at a different class. And that means the return should be a whole lot higher. I just can't see any other team with enough bullets in the roster to be able to make a deal to get Bedard. Again, anything's possible, Roddy, but I would have been surprised in September if Bedard was getting moved, and I'd be really, really stunned now if he isn't a Regina Pat after Tuesday. And here's the other thing, too. If Regina gets into the playoffs, and that's a question mark right now in the Eastern Conference, isn't it? But if they get in, and if he gets going, and if they get great goaltending from Drew Sim, and maybe they make a tweak or 2 to their roster over the next 48 hours, you want to face that guy in a 7-game series? Time will tell.
Wow, it is fun. Very fun to watch. And a wonderful recap and a great job by our crew to throw those boards up. Joey, thanks for this. Always nice to see you, my man. Enjoy the arms race. We'll do it again here through the playoffs.
You got it. Thanks again, Roddy. All the best.
The great Joey Kenward, Sportsnet 650, Vancouver. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the RP Show on YouTube. And don't forget, we're live daily on YouTube from noon to 2 Eastern. If you like what you see, hit subscribe. And if you like the program, check around for other segments of The Rod Pedersen Show here on YouTube.